What's up, all you swing geeks and 3D motion nerds? Welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I am your host, Jason Sutton, aka The Guru, where it is my mission in life to tease out the habits, life lessons, secrets to success, as well as to discuss the technical teaching and coaching ideas you can apply to your career and your life immediately to hopefully help achieve better results for your students and your life. Massive gratitude to all the high performers that I've had on this show so far and their willingness to share their knowledge and expertise with all of you. And thank you for listening, sharing, and supporting the podcast. On this episode, I talked to one of the up-and-coming young superstars in the coaching business, my good friend Corey Lundberg. I met Corey, I think it was about 6 years ago at our National Teaching and Coaching Summit. And after spending a few minutes and a couple of days with Corey, I knew immediately that he was going to be a superstar in our teaching business. And it's been such a joy for me to watch his career grow and blossom, as he is one of the finest coaches in the country now, teaching with Cameron McCormick at Altus Performance. A little bit about Corey, a little bio. Corey is the COO and a high-performance coach at Altus Performance. He has been recognized as Best Young Teacher in America by Golf Digest, 2014 to 2017, and will soon, I think, be in the top 100 list very, very shortly. Selected as one of the Golf Digest best teachers in Texas and named a top 50 kids teacher in the United States as well. You can follow Corey on Twitter and Instagram at @CLundbergGolf, and also follow Altus Performance on Instagram and I believe Twitter as well. I also highly recommend his and Cameron McCormick's new podcast called Earn Your Edge, which is fantastic. I've listened to, I think, every episode, and they have a lot of great guests on there, including a lot of their players like Jordan Spieth, Bo Hostler, and many more. So check that out. I always like recommending great podcasts. And on this episode, we discuss a variety of topics, the vision and mission statement of Altus Performance, which I think is very beneficial, how to organize and build a performance plan for your players, and the importance of the follow-up. Corey also shares a few of his skill-building exercises that he uses, as well as how to simulate pressure for your tournament players during practice, and also gives some great advice to young coaches on how to improve their teaching and coaching skills and ultimately further your career, as he has done very nicely, as well as a variety of other topics that we get into in this a little shorter version. We had a little bit of time constraint, so I'll have to get Corey back on the show to start elaborating even more on his expertise of coaching elite juniors, college players, and PGA Tour and European PGA Tour players, which is really his niche. So without further ado, let's get to this wide-ranging conversation with my friend Corey Lundberg. Enjoy. All right, Corey, welcome to the show, man. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this.
Absolutely, Jason. Thank you very much for having me on, man.
I know we've been trying to catch up for a while. We're both running in circles here with our busy lives. So I really appreciate this and excited to kind of dig into it. I know you're kind of limited with time, but I want to still give the listeners a little bit of lineage of your career, because I feel like I'm kind of like a big brother to you.
Yeah, you are. There's no doubt about it. That's a good way to put it,
and,
for sure.
And it's been such a proud moment for me watching your career grow and to see how you've progressed. So let's talk about your childhood. I mean, were you a curious child, and was that something that you were born with, or do you think it just developed over time?
You know, I think that as related to the things that I was really interested in, I think I was a little bit obsessive with certain things, and I probably picked that up from my brother, who's close to me in age, who's the same way. Once he kind of gets into something, it's like you got to learn everything you can about it. And that's kind of how I was with sports, especially like baseball and basketball, and a huge fan of all different sports. And then my dad was a golfer and is an avid golfer. He's crazy about it. And so then eventually it became golf when I was probably maybe a little later than most, maybe 12 or 13. And then, so I don't know if curious is the way to put it. Certainly there's some curiosity that develops, as a characteristic later on, but I think a better way to put it is just like obsessive, just wanting to kind of dig into one topic and get as deep into it as I possibly could. Yeah. And that's still the case.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so take us through, because I know you went to you played in high school, then you went to college, and you did the PGM. You kind of went the PGM exactly. route. So talk a little bit about that and how you got to where you are now. Yeah.
So, I guess you could look at it two ways. Either lucky that I had the self-awareness or realized the limit as far as what I could do as a golfer. And so that led me down the road of kind of what I wanted to do professionally quicker than maybe it would have some other people that maybe chased it a little longer than they should have as far as trying to play.
Right.
And either go play somewhere small that you haven't heard of or go to the PGM school at Arizona State. And so that's where I went and kind of just developed a interest in coaching really, really early on, and was lucky to work around some good coaches when I would do internships back here in Dallas, and it's definitely where my interest was. And then when I graduated, moved to Austin, was at UT Golf Club, and Chuck Cook kind of hung around there, and so I got to spend a little bit of time around him, and that kind of, you see a guy who is as established and accomplished in his career that still has this unbelievable desire to learn and is still learning stuff. I think that was exciting for me to think that you could do it for a really long time and continue to learn new topics and new ways to get better. And so that just reinforced my desire to dig into learning more about coaching. Then ended up in Houston, was the director of instruction at a club called Carlton Woods in Houston, where worked with a lot of developmental players, younger players, and obviously the membership as well. And then kind of developed a good friendship and relationship through ties with Cameron McCormick, through some people that I had worked with previously. And the opportunity kind of eventually came to move up to Dallas, and we started Altus Performance, which is headquartered out of Trinity Forest Golf Club in Dallas, where I am now. And we're about 2 years into it now. So yeah, that's the quick resume.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys have grown so fast. I know I remember when we first met, I think it was at one of the national coaching summits, and you were just, I think at Carlton Woods at the time, and just getting into it. We were sort of sharing some stories. And then I know you were collaborating with Cam a little bit before that. So it was a natural progression. Has it been always a passion of yours to work with better players, or is that sort of just evolved?
Yeah, I mean, I think that maybe not even to say better players, but I think that what my biggest criteria is, I just wanted to work with people that were as invested and committed as I was. And so when you've got a recreational player and you've got players at a membership, it's not their full-time job. They're recreational, right? And so they're playing when they can. And I think that I probably gravitated towards better players because how kind of invested I was. You work with a recreational player, and it's not always realistic for them to have done the work between lessons, and as I know that everybody who's taught recreational players knows, and it's no knock on them. And it's just that when you are working with better players, it's like they're eat, sleep, and breathe getting better. And I think that that's where kind of what made my heart sing, was that I could kind of jump in that journey along with them, because it's certainly the passion that kind of drives me towards that. So yeah, not necessarily better players, just people that can be invested in and are all in and getting better.
Right. I mean, you're with, I think, one of the best teaching pros with Cam, and one of the most organized is sort of what I gleaned from him the time that I met him first, I think a few years ago. And I know you're the same way. So tell us a little bit, because I was kind of digging into the website, and I'm curious about the ethos page, where I guess that's sort of your mission statement. How did that come about? Can you share with us a little bit of that mantra? Because I really think it's great.
Yeah, I think that it's really important that you have a way to communicate your culture to potential clients and even to existing clients. You want everyone to be on the same page as far as expectations are. And so back, when we're in the planning stage of this, we just wanted to have a document that kind of informed our decisions. Every decision that we would have would be seen through the lens of, is this in alignment with our beliefs and our values and our ethos. And so, you kind of have to start by defining, well, what is that ethos? And so, we just went about, we had a shared document where we just kind of compiled some things that we thought were most important to us philosophically, and just, what we think is really important for a client to know about us. And what is important for us to keep in mind as we operate on a daily basis, just to have this daily reminder of this is who we are, this is how we do things. And I think that having that visible, not only to other people so that they get an idea of what we're about, but equally important, visible to us on a daily basis. Make sure that we're walking the walk and talking the talk. So that's where the ethos came from. I don't know if you want to dig into specifics there.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, we don't have to cover all 10, but I think, number one, no one person is bigger than the team. I think it's such a great way to coach, and also a great way to live. And I think that's what sort of draws me to your performance, part of it. I think, can you talk a little bit about that and how it sort of trickles down? I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's number one for a reason.
Right.
It's the guiding principle of altruism, is that our job is to support and to navigate along on the journey with the clients that, we have the privilege of spending time with. And I think that our goal is always to be transformational rather than transactional. I think that we all have seen and maybe even experienced as an athlete what it's like to be around a transactional coach. Is your hour over yet? Okay, go ahead and pay me the money. And then that's kind of where it starts and ends, rather than a transformational coach, which is they're really in with you. They're supporting you in all phases, not just making sure that you're not hitting a slice, but they're taking up a bigger role in your life than maybe just somebody who you see once an hour for every other week or so. And so that's our goal, is that we're there to support our clients in a variety of ways, not just swing coach, but kind of more holistic approach, and strive to be that transformational coach. And I think that that's where your passion is. I think it comes out in these conversations, and all great coaches, they really see that privilege that they have of being with someone as this, great opportunity to make an impact in a positive way. And sometimes that transcends sports. Sometimes that goes beyond like fixing the slice, and
Right.
I think that's one of the things that's why we're passionate about coaching. And it's what makes this, more than a job. It's what makes us love kind of coaching what we do, especially when you're talking about, you get to spend time around these younger athletes that are aspiring to, really, really ambitious goals, to try to be more than just a swing coach for those players and athletes, is something that again, it makes our heart sing. It's where our passion is. And so, that's why that's number one on the list.
This episode is sponsored by No One. Insert your company name here. If you would have an interest in becoming a sponsor of the Golf Guru Show, please send me a proposal email to golfgurushow@gmail.com, and I will review it. I am looking for company sponsors that share the same passion for success, continuous learning genes, and sharing qualities that I have, and would love to partner with a company with these values. If you want to be a part of this project, feel free to contact me today. All right, guys, let's get back to the show. I think that's very well said. So let's dig into what you do on a day-to-day basis when a new client comes to you. And I know you're working with what's your ratio? Is it more juniors right now, or is it more professionals? I'm not sure, how your breakdown is.
Yeah, it's probably maybe 30 to 40% professionals. Maybe 20% of that is collegiate, and then the rest are the other 40% or so are high performing juniors.
Right. So perfect. So when you take on a new client, walk us through the steps that you go through in building them a plan for improvement.
Yeah, so it starts, and I kind of joke with new clients when they come in that the process may be a little underwhelming, because at least as an introduction goes, because typically, when you have in mind, I'm going to go see a new coach, it's like, I cannot wait for this guy and all of his wisdom to tell me what no one else has seen about my golf swing, and I'm going to get better so fast. And I know that that's where the excitement is. Right. But what I tell them is, when you go see the doctor, you do not go go straight to surgery. You have these thorough diagnostics that says, all right, we got to figure out what's going on right here. And so typically that may be a 2 to 3 hour session, that first session. And maybe the first 45 minutes to an hour is spent in my office. And I'm just getting an idea of, what's performance history, what's instruction history, what are the goals, how do you kind of assess your skills, and not just the hard skills, but also the soft skills of how are you preparing for an event, what are the psychological kind of obstacles that we have, the mental skills, how are you training, and I'm trying to get as clear a picture as I can of what's been going on, before they've been in that room, and kind of how the road that they have traveled to get to where they are, and then understanding what that final destination is. And from there, I've got at least a better idea for how we need to map out the rest of the journey. And then it becomes, all right, now let's go evaluate where we are with skills. And so we have a variety of ways that we look at what does scrambling look like, what does ball striking look like, what does putting look like. And then along with data, along with really good performance metrics, so stats, we can kind of start to develop what that training plan would look like and what our goals would be from a form perspective. Like, all right, let's try to, based on what we see and what our goals are, well, what does this blueprint need to look like from a form perspective as far as technical changes that we need to make? So then, after a few hours of doing that and assuming that you've got some good performance metrics leading in, I think that you've got a pretty good idea for what the road is going to look like. And then it's just all about course correction. It's all about, as you go, you just revise that plan and you kind of read and react what performance, as performance would dictate.
So what's that analysis? What kind of tools do you use for that initial analysis? Do you do a TrackMan combine, or is it just you watching them hit different shots or putting them in different situations?
Yeah, it's so for full swing. I mean, I don't think it's anything real groundbreaking. It's definitely, we've got TrackMan, we've got video, and we've got Swing Catalyst running, and we're going through the bag.
Gotcha.
And we're having a lot of conversations. I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm having them kind of rate shots. I'm trying to get an idea of where their form focus is initially, kind of what they're trying to do technically. And then, so it's pretty basic, just so I can get an idea, and then trying to get, if there's an opportunity to get on the golf course and see some shots on the golf course or in a more light golf setting, then that would be the goal of that initial assessment. But yeah, sometimes we'll do some kind of a more formalized like combine type, but I think you can figure out what you need to just going through the bag.
Sure. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, it's nice to have that time to be that thorough. I mean, after you've sort of built their plan out and start to get to work, I mean, how often are you seeing the kids or your clients?
Yeah.
What's that look like as far as the progression?
Yeah, I think probably the most common or the most average answer that is probably once every couple weeks. Now with college clients, that's not always an option. And then depending on the time of year, how dense the tournament schedule, that's not an option. So
sure.
What we try to do if we don't have frequency as our goal, then we try to solve that through a couple ways. One, we want longer sessions. If I can't see you often, I want to see you for longer. And then we do some remote coaching. So we have a pretty good system we call Altus Anywhere that we use, where we're using Coach Now a lot, and we're using our golf stat lab to give us stats, and we have some weekly reflection sheets that clients will fill out where they're reflecting on their performance to a pretty thorough detail, and then they're reflecting on their training, and then we're kind of having just weekly check-ins. So that may be a conversation, that may just be some messages back and forth on Coach Now, but it kind of runs the gamut. I think that idea talking for local clients, it's maybe once every 2 weeks, but local clients really doesn't represent the majority of our clients because a lot of them are kind of spread out around.
Yeah, I know you got some European players and you got all over the world. It looks like you guys are growing so fast. I was always curious to how you keep up with everybody, and that's interesting doing it, I guess, with apps and video. And how do you, exactly. I mean, I think that the hardest thing that I've found, especially with the kids, is to get them to write anything down. It's like, how do you get them to journal? Like that's what I'm really impressed with listening to some of your podcasts, that they have the ability, or they're getting the habits of journaling and reflecting.
I remember when I was in Carlton Woods in Houston, I used to always ask Cameron that question, because all of Cameron's clients were, they had that conscientiousness and that discipline to do that stuff. And I asked the same questions, but then, kind of being immersed in this environment and this culture, it really is, it goes back ethos piece, and it goes back to what are the expectations. And it's something that Cameron has done an unbelievable job creating, that there's this expectation that you're going to do what's required. And there's almost a little bit of a peer pressure to that, because, when I have a couple group trainings a week, and when you get a group of kids together, there's almost like a pressure of, oh, you didn't even put your stats in, and it's other kids that are giving each other a hard time for not going through those steps. And it's almost like if you don't do that stuff, it's like, what are you doing? Right. And so when there's that kind of tribe mentality and that culture that Cameron, and to Cameron's credit, when you walk into our and I can say a lot to Cameron's credit, but
sure.
When you walk into the building here, there's about 20 banners on the wall, and of all the clients of Cameron's that have accomplished some unbelievable things. And so when you have all those skins on the wall, there becomes this feeling of, oh, well, this is what they did, and I want to have my banner on the wall. So I'm going to fall in line. I'm going to do the things that I know that I have validation that this works. And you've got these proximal role models of people that have accomplished some really extraordinary things, some big goals. And so, I think that helps support that. It's kind of the momentum that some success from other clients and other athletes that are around you a lot that you get to see frequently. I think that kind of builds some of that buy-in. It's easier to get the buy-in that way, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. That's fantastic. Give us some examples, because we talked about a little bit before about skill building, and I think it's always interesting to hear coaches that are working with really good junior players or elite junior players and college players, is some of the exercises or say drills and games that you have as sort of go-tos. You don't have to give us all your secrets, but I've stole so many things over the years from Cameron. I know you guys got a lot of cool ones. Anything that sort of go-to that you could share?
Yeah, no secrets. I mean, we share a lot of it on Instagram, and we're trying to do more of that, is to kind of give, we kind of split things up in session where we've got our form work, where we're working on technique, and we're doing all of our, the fun stuff, the technical coaching that is, as coaches we like to do. And then we've got skill work. So we're trying to apply that base version of the technique that we've been working on to a variety of conditions, so that we have, really what we call skill flexibility, to where you can not only hit that base version of the shot, but you can hit it low, you can hit high, you can hit the cut, you can hit the draw, you can do it from a variety of lies, and you can be really adaptable and kind of how you take your game to the golf course. Give me if I could go into either full swing stuff, I can tell you what I've done today.
Let's do full swing.
Yeah. So just in my last session, just an hour ago, we did something called the tour ladder, which once we feel like we've got a pretty good, like ball control looks pretty good, then we might move into tour ladder, which is from 120 to 220. There's different rungs of the ladder. So every 10 yards is a new rung on the ladder. So you would move from 120 to 130 and on all the way up into 220. So you start at 120, and to move on to the next rung of the ladder, you have to finish your ball within a 3% proximity, which is the tour standards. And then so once you get a ball within 3%, you move on to the next rung of the ladder. If you miss by more than 10%, then you have to go back on the rung of the ladder. So at any point, if you're between, if say you miss it big, then you have to go backwards on the ladder, and you just keep climbing up rungs of the ladder. And so we kind of get into a tendency to, we get one club in our hand, we're working on a technical change, and we kind of get a feel for it, but then to mix it up and to say, okay, now do it, where you actually have to control the distance, and you also have a proximity standard and a benchmark that says, that makes it really clear as far as feedback goes, if you've been successful or not, is a really cool way to kind of make that next step after you've worked on some form changes. So that would be an example. I mean, I think that, there's a number of skill kind of work that we could talk about, but I think the principles that we have is, that they're in context, meaning that it's not just hitting one shot over and over again. They require, they have got pretty high standards as far as what they were a successful shot. So, in full swing, we might put constraints in it. Says it has to have this launch direction, has to have this curve direction, and it has to have this proximity to the hole. And so, and obviously that challenge point changes based on the skill of the player in front of us. And then it has feedback if you've been successful or not. So I think with all of our skills tasks, there's always like you're chasing after this goal. And so you have feedback when you get done. I think the worst thing is you walk off the range and you're not sure if you got better or not. And you don't have anything to measure yourself against to say, hey, this was a successful, I got better, I got worse. And I think having a few of those skills games can make that a little bit more vivid, a little bit more tangible, so you can start to see the direct, impact of the work that you've been doing, maybe from a form perspective, or maybe it's just from improving skill. Yeah. So I think that we just try to follow that kind of framework for those skills challenges.
How do you, because I think this is a big question that I think comes up a lot in our teaching circles, is how do you put enough pressure or simulate pressure that they're going to experience, during a tournament or like maybe they're in the lead. I've heard I think I know the answer, but I want you to share it because I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one because some players are adamant that no matter what we do, that there's not enough, we're not going to be able to simulate. And I think that there's something to that.
Yeah, it's difficult.
Think that physiologically. Yeah, I mean, when you're in the lead and you have a 5-footer on Sunday on the last hole, just the somatic response of what you're feeling biologically, we're not going to be able to reproduce that. Right. But if we can have these kind of training tasks that maybe it's even artificial, maybe it's a little manufactured that you can anchor back to and say, well, but I did do this when there was a little bit of pressure on, and I have tried to simulate this. I think it gives you something to anchor back to. And so that is feedback that we've heard from a lot of our high performing clients, that while it may not be exactly the same, it is something that you're able to refer back to. If that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, and we, Cameron's awesome phrase is cash, crowds, and consequences.
That's
what we fall back. Yeah. So
explain that a little bit.
Money on the line.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So if we need to create some of that pressure in practice, we either have, cash. So when you go play a money, there's a consequence, right? And then so we also have different kinds of consequences. So I just had a group out, yesterday. I had my team training and we did a horse race to where if you lost on the first hole, you were done. You go home. That's the consequence. And I trust me, they felt pressure because the session was going to be over. If they lose on the first hole, then someone's going home. And so that's something that maybe when they get in a playoff down the road, or, it's just something that they can anchor back to and reference that, will be helpful to them in a future experience where they're experiencing some of that pressure is a good thing. And then crowds is the other piece. No matter who you are, being around certain crowds is going to, bring up some of those feelings of nervousness and pressure. And so we try to create that, every once in a while, Cam will put somebody on, Instagram Live, or we'll say we're taping this. Sometimes we actually share it. Sometimes we don't. So sometimes that's a virtual crowd, but other times it's having to perform certain things around players that you really respect. So that there's no shortage of very accomplished players around here on a day-to-day basis, whether they be in session or just practicing and training. And so, if you've got a player that you look up to and that you want them to think that you're good, which that's how they all kind of feel, then you've got to perform this task with a group of those guys watching. So, it goes back to the culture piece of kind of everybody, lifting each other up in that way. But yeah, cash, crowds, and consequences is a good way to kind of embed some pressure in those training situations.
I love that. What advice would you give to young coaches out there? Because I think you're still young compared to me, but now you're starting to get into you're starting to get into a position where you're giving advice to young coaches or PGM students or interns. So give us a blueprint of how they can get better.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you're a excellent model for this, and it's something that you've done a great job, but you just have to have somebody that stretches you. You have to have a mentor around you. I mean, I've been lucky, and I can't and because every day, I'm trying to be as good as Cameron is. And I think, one thing that you kind of, as you're around more people that you respect and admire in the profession that you're in, I think that what happens sometimes, and I've had it happen before, is you think, well, this guy hung the moon and I'm going to go and get close and find out. And sometimes what you find out is maybe they didn't hang the moon. You know what I mean?
Right.
Jason? Like maybe they don't do things quite as different as you thought they did. And so, coming from a place of great admiration for Cameron, and then being around him every day, what I find is that he's even better. It's like every day.
I believe that.
I never have that feeling. He's better than you think he is, and I still feel that however many years into this. And so I always feel stretched. I always feel challenged. So I have somebody that I can lean on, that can help me, that is very generous and invested in my development. And at the same time, there's always pressure to be better. And so when you kind of have that, it's self-inflicted pressure. When you have someone around that kind of inspires you to keep stretching and to keep doing more. And if you can be even if that's not one person, if that's a peer group, if that's a group of coaches that you may not work with day in and day out, but I had that with Matt too, Matt Wilson, who is a really, really good friend. We've never worked together, but we would call each other all the time and we'd kind of talk through some things. And at the same time, we're also stretching each other because, I say it's like when you go run a race with somebody, Cameron is so far ahead of us in the race that you kind of lose a little perspective. But with Matt and I, we were kind of at the same spot in the race. And so when he would take off, well, I would run faster. And if one of us lags behind, we kind of grab that person and say, come on, we got to hurry up. And so I think just having that support system, whether it be through peers or through a mentor, or ideally, both of those, is because you don't know what you don't know. And if you're on an island, if you're by yourself, then I think that it's a real limiter to what you can learn and how challenged you are. So I think having some support structure around you that, inspires you and encourages you and challenges you is probably and I know that sounds cliche. I don't know how groundbreaking that is, because I think most successful people kind of have given that advice, but I can validate it through my own experience that it's been, imperative to kind of any development that I've had.
No, I think it's perfect. And it is a common answer that we get, but it's finding somebody that cares about your development, I think is the main point. And I'm happy to be like a small part of that for you.
No doubt, man. Yeah, no question about it. No question.
So when developing as a top teacher, I think there's two sides of it, and you can call it teaching or coaching, or what I call IQ versus EQ. What do you think is the best way to develop that, especially the EQ? Because I think the IQ is much easier now for young coaches because the information is so available. And
you cut out.
I'm sorry.
Hey, you cut out a little bit there. I didn't. You cut out a little bit there. Say that again.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So talking about the difference between IQ and EQ. How do you develop the EQ? Because that's what I'm really trying to stress to the young coaches, because the information is out there. To develop the IQ, I think, is quicker. The EQ is a little bit more difficult, and I think that's something that you do a great job of, is really the coaching piece and the bedside manner, and like you said, the caring about your students.
Yeah, I think that first I'll say that I think they're both equally important. I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. If you don't have the IQ piece, then you're going to be limited. You're not going to be able to affect the change that you're not going to be able to move the needle
100%
from a form perspective, and actually having someone move the needle. So I think that I don't think you can outweigh one over the other. I think you have to have both of them. But as far as the EQ piece, I think it gives you a really good opportunity to look at other sports, because what you're talking about is you're not looking at something that's sport specific, to where you need to know, domain specific technical knowledge. And so it allows us this cool opportunity to look outside of golf and what other really great coaches do, especially in team sports, where maybe EQ maybe more highlighted than in golf, to where you've got to keep this team together. And so, I think looking outside other sports, there's plenty of, as you said, there's plenty of technical advice available in golf, but there's also plenty of coach biographies available. There's plenty of information that we can get on the best coaches in the world, no matter what sport that they're in, that gives us a kind of a peek into how, John Wooden is the one that comes to mind as far as especially when you say EQ, as someone who is known for kind of nurturing, and what also is known about them is that doesn't necessarily mean that he was coddling, because I think, from what I've read, is that the players, when they were playing for like a guy like John Wooden, who has that reputation for great EQ, is that most players didn't like him.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the misconceptions maybe about EQ, is that it's not about coddling and being soft and nurturing all the time, that there's it's multidimensional, and sometimes it means trying to get the most out of someone by challenging them in difficult ways and having difficult conversations. And I know that's something that, I felt like there was a time where I always played the good cop, and I think that probably had a lot to do with being around developmental aged players, to where you're just trying to ignite that passion and you're trying to get them involved in golf. But as you get a little further down the road on the stages of development, and especially I've observed this with Cameron, is that that you've got to, sometimes you can't play the good cop, sometimes you have to play the bad cop, and sometimes you have to challenge that client to do more than what they're doing. And I think that can be just as impactful as some of the nurturing that we kind of associate EQ with. So I think being able to hit both sides of the spectrum would be my advice there, along with looking outside of golf, because there's a lot of unbelievable coaches that have great reputations for what you're speaking to. And so I think kind of trying to broaden our knowledge base in that regard is probably a good thing to do.
I can't let you go without giving us a few book ideas, because you're like me, very, very well read, and I know you've got some great ideas on that. So what book or books have influenced your life or your career?
So we're going. I was going to give you kind of what my most recent
absolutely
reads would have been, but
we can do both.
Yeah. We had Ryan Holiday on our podcast a few weeks ago. He wrote "The Obstacle Is the Way." That's a big one.
I heard that was great.
Probably, if I have one book that I recommend, especially to clients more than any other, that's probably the number one most recommended. Now I'm reading, I have like 3 or 4 books that I'm kind of skimming through and skipping back and forth. Measure What Matters is one that I think is really cool, especially as you look at trying to blueprint a kind of a path to where you want to go, having these like really clear objectives along with some key results that you would associate to them, especially as you look at stats, is a cool way for coaches. It's a business book, but it works for coaches as well. There's also a book by Annie Duke that I'm reading. If you look up an Annie Duke, she's a poker player.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of it. Winning with Bets or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a really, really cool one, because there's some really unbelievable parallels between coaches and poker players or gamblers,
for sure.
Because they're making all these decisions in high pressure situations, like so many decisions in a short period of time, and there's a lot of unknown factors, and we're doing the exact thing as coaches. Unknown factors. It's a complex, complicated, messy process with a lot of unknowns out there, and we're making decisions in high pressure situations, and we're making a lot of those. And so that was a really interesting book. So again, my favorite books have been outside of golf, to kind of connect the dots in other industries, other kind of domains, and trying to make them applicable and relevant to what we do as coaches.
I love that. That's fantastic. If you had to get one message to the world, billions of people, and you basically could put it on a billboard or it's like a skywriter, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I wasn't prepared to answer this question, but what comes top of mind is that gratitude is the secret sauce. And I tell it, we talk, I have a 4-year-old, and we talk about gratitude and kindness. And as coaches, I think it's a especially important thing to do. That I know that when I take a moment to feel some gratitude for the opportunities, relationships that I have through golf and through coaching, it kind of lifts me up a little bit. And it's something that, we talk with our kids about, we talk with our clients about, is that gratitude solves a lot of different things. So when you can sit back and think that there are a lot of things that we're lucky for, that a lot of things that all of us are blessed for. And instead of ignoring those and just taking them for granted, a little bit of gratitude goes a long way in making us all happier and better. So that feels really cheesy as it comes out of my mouth right there.
It's very
but
good.
It's the first thing that came to mind in answering that.
That's a great answer. And it's an awesome place to stop. And dude, I can't tell you how proud I am of you and your work, and you continue to push the envelope and to reach higher. And I'm very, very excited to see what you're going to do.
I appreciate it, man.
So give everybody
great content, man.
Thank you, and to give everybody your handles and your website and how they can get a hold of you and say thank you with your social media platforms.
I think my Instagram is C Lundberg and Twitter is C Lundberg Golf. But more than anything, I'd love if you're listening to Jason, then there's probably a pretty good overlap and who's listening to our Cameron and I's podcast, Earn Your Edge.
Yes.
So that's a good way to find out more about what we're doing. And then our website is altusperformance.com. So and then the Instagram, we're pretty active on Instagram at Altus Performance is another way to check out some of the stuff that we're doing as well.
Yeah, I've listened to every single episode of your podcast, and it's fantastic, and I learn something every time, and I try to share it with my players. So keep up the great work, and I know you got to get to the lesson tee, but we will catch up and possibly do a round 2 in the near future. Okay?
Yeah, that'd be great, Jason. Thanks, man. Have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks, buddy. What's up, everybody? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Corey Lundberg for coming on the show and sharing such great information on his teaching and coaching and really dropping some valuable life lessons as well. Please reach out to Corey on Twitter at C Lundberg Golf or at Altus Performance and on Instagram as well, and say thank you. And also check out their website at altusperformance.com. Don't forget to check out Corey and Cam's Earn Your Edge podcast as well, after you've finished listening to mine, of course. And tweet me your biggest takeaway from Corey, as you can reach me on Twitter and follow me on Twitter or follow me on Instagram if you haven't already at Golf Guru TV. And also check out my website at golfgurutv.net, where you can find a lot of videos, articles, and information on my teaching and coaching. Don't forget to send in your questions to #GuruFridays by emailing me at the show, golfgurushow@gmail.com, where I will assign you a fake name and answer all your teaching and coaching questions. This episode and all episodes of the Golf Guru Show was produced by myself, Jason Sutton. Music is by Zach Mullet, aka Cutta Beats. And leave me an iTunes review. I've got a couple of on there. I appreciate all you guys leaving reviews and let me know how I can do better. I'm trying to improve and create more content that's going to be useful for you. Let me know if you have any ideas of guests on the show. I've got a ton of guests lined up, just trying to get the schedules down and trying to get these guys on. But I've got some really, really high-performing coaches and also a few professional athletes outside of the teaching business that I think you're going to enjoy listening to. As I always leave with you guys, study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks so much for listening.